Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnah Yeshkalim, Perek Zayin, Chapter 7, Mishnah Aleph, Mishnah 1. Okay, so the previous Mishnayos we talked about, excuse me, the 13 chests that were in the Beis HaMikdash where people will put different monies. Now, in order to understand our Mishnah, you need to see this diagram. The diagram is that the 13 chests were all placed in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, placed in a circle. And the Mishnah had listed them 1 to 13. So basically 1 to 13 went, as we have in this picture, it went this way, right? Went counterclockwise.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they went. Now,
what's any relationship to the gates when they?
No, not as far as I know. So it was counterclockwise, and it came out that what we would call the first chest and the 13th chest were basically right opposite each other. And the entire discussion of this Mishnah is going to be what happens when you find coins in between two chests and you don't know which chest it fell from. That's the whole discussion. And in order to understand the discussion, you need to have this picture in mind to know, the examples that are given between the money found between this chest and this chest. What do you do? Well, you need to know, it's important to know that these chests were next to each other and to understand, why this question would come about. So Mishnah Aleph reads, Mois shenimtzu bein hashkalim lenadava. If money was found between the chest that said shkalim, the chest in which you put in the new shekels for the year for the year's communal sacrifices, and between what's counted as a 13th chest, which is nadava, which is the chest that the money was put in for the what we call the voluntary communal offerings, the offerings that were brought as burnt offerings when there were not enough sacrifices for that day to keep the mizbeach always in use. They had this fund to buy sacrifices to offer in order to keep the mizbeach always in use. So if you find the money between those two chests, so karev l'shkalim, if you find the money closer to the shkalim chest, yipul l'shkalim. Then you put it, they fall to the shkalim, means you put the money into the shkalim chest. You assume that's where it came from. La nadava, let's say it was closer to the nadava chest, the voluntary communal sacrifice chest, yipul nadava. The money then falls, you put the money into the nadava chest. So what we're seeing from the first part of the Mishnah is that when we have a doubt as to where it belongs, we will follow what's called karev, whichever is closer. The closer thing determines that that's where it fell from. When we have a suffix, when we have a doubt, we find this concept, and this is what the Mishnah is telling us, that karev, proximity, is enough to answer your doubt and to say, this is where it goes. Mechza lemechza, what happens if it's halfway in between both? Can't really tell which way it is. Yiplu l'nedava. Then they fall to the nedava chest. And the reason for that is because the nedava chest, the nedava chest, the monies for that were always used to buy olos, burnt offerings. Those voluntary communal sacrifices that we call them were all olos, burnt offerings. The shkalim were bought for different communal sacrifices that some of them the Kohanim would eat from. So we always are looking to put the money, when we have this doubt and we don't have a determining factor what to do with it, we always then have to be strict. We have to go the stricter way because we're dealing with a question in the Torah law. If the money was supposed to be used for burnt offerings, you can't use it for something less. Yeah. So therefore, an olas, and how do we determine what's considered more sacred? So basically, we have to then put it to the more sacred, to the more holy use. How do we determine that? Well, an olah, which is completely given to Hashem, is considered more sacred than the other sacrifices where some of them are going to be eaten by Kohanim. Not only that, we also learned that when you have leftover shkalim in the chamber, after the 3 times we separate the shkalim for the communal sacrifices, there was money left over in the chamber that was actually used for building and repairing the walls around Yerushalayim. They weren't even used for offerings. So therefore, the money, if the money came from the communal sacrifice chest, that money is considered more sacred because it was going to be used for olos, burnt offerings, while if it was a shekel, then a shekel was going to be used not only for burnt offerings, but other offerings that the Kohanim eat from. And as we say, for even things that have nothing to do with offerings. Therefore, the money has to go towards the more sacred purpose, which would be for the communal sacrifices. Okay. Now, another thing that's important to know, which is pointed out by the Bar Tanura, commentary of the Bar Tanura, is that the Gemara, the Mishnah clearly is working with, when you have a doubt, where did the money fall from? Look at which one is closer. The closer one is going to determine where it belongs. If it's not close to either one, then you got to put the money into the more stricter use. Now, there's actually, just 1 second. Hold on 1 second. All right. There is another concept that's important to know is that there's another determining factor when we have a doubt, and that's called rov, majority. And when you have something that, so for instance, in this case, in our Mishnah's case, the Mishnah says, well, depending on which chest it's closer to, goes to that chest. Actually, there's a determining, you have to actually determine something before that. You actually have to, when you find that money, you got to look at both chests. And you got to say, okay, which one has more coins in it? Because then, if one of them has more coins than the other one, then we say that when we have a question, where did something come from? We don't know where it came from. Where did it come from? We say it came from the majority thing that it could have started from. So if I have the chest with let's say the shkalim is a majority over the chest with the communal sacrifice coins. And so even if that coin would have been found closer to the communal sacrifice chest, but there was more coins in the shkalim chest, then I would say, where did this money come from? From the thing that's the majority, right? My question is, does it come from this chest or from that chest? Well, we say it comes from the thing that there's more of, the majority. And therefore, in that case, I would say, no matter what it's close to, I would say it follows the majority. And it goes to whichever one has more coins. So our Mishnah that doesn't talk about the rov, doesn't talk about the majority, it talks about the proximity, is talking about where there's exactly the same amount of coins in both. And since I don't have a majority which to determine my question, then I follow the proximity. And the proximity doesn't help because it's not closer to one more than the other. Then you have to give it towards the more stricter use. Next. Let's say you find the money between the chest for the wood chest or the lavona chest. One chest, if a person donated wood to the Beis HaMikdash, they could put money into that chest for the wood. And then Kohanim would take the money and buy wood for to be used on the altar. If let's say a person wanted to donate lavona, frankincense, which was used for offerings. If he wanted to donate that, he got money in the lavona chest. Now the money was found between those two chests. So we say, Karav la'etzim, yiplu la'etzim. If it's closer to the wood chest, it goes into that chest. La lavina, if it's closer to the frankincense chest, yiplu lavina. Then it goes to the lavina chest. Mechza la half and half, yiplu la lavina. That money then has to go to the lavina chest. Why? Because the lavina chest is considered more sacred. Because lavina was actually an offering. While the wood, although it was burnt on the altar, it wasn't an offering. It was just meant to be the fuel to burn the offerings. And since lavona, therefore, is considered more sacred, the money would go to that. Next case. Let's say you found the money between the chest that said kinin, which we translate as bird pairs, and the chest that said goizla oila, the young pigeon, the young birds used for burnt offering. Now, we had a question, we had an argument in the previous Mishnah as to what exactly these two chests were. But the Mishnah is following the opinion that says the kinin chest, the bird pair chest, for people who had an obligation to bring two birds. In order to, they were impure for a certain reason. They're going through the process of purification. The completion of that process of purification is when they bring two birds. One bird is an ola burnt offering. The other one is a chatas, is a sin offering. That was the kinin chest. So the kingdom chest actually was for people who had an obligation to bring the birds, that they would give that they would go ahead and they would put in money for birds One and the money would be used. One would be used for a burnt offering. One would be used for a sin offering for that person who put the money in. Goizle Ayla, the young bird's chest. That was for voluntary offerings. A person, let's say, wanted to voluntarily bring a bird offering. They put the money in that chest for whatever they decided, whether it was a dove, whether it was going to be pigeons. They went in and they decided to put the money in for that, and the money was used for that. So that chest was used for voluntary offerings, but those offerings were only olos. Olos, that's what they were used for. Goizle ola, birds for an ola. So one chest was used for bird offerings. One would be an ola, one would be a chatas. The other chest was used for bird offerings that were only an ola. Now, as we said before, an ola offering is considered more sacred than a chatas offering, than a sin offering, because an ola offering is completely burnt, meaning completely given to God, while by a sin offering, the kohanim eat from the meat. So in this case, we say it like this. The money was found between those two chests. Karev lekinim yiplu lekinim. Let's say the money is closer to the kinim chest, to the bird pair chest. That's where the money goes. The guys like if the money is closer to the chest for the young birds for the ola offerings, yiplu guys like the money goes to that chest. Mechza lemechza, and let's say it's halfway. Yiplu the guys like then the money has to go into the chest that says young birds for an ola, because as we said before, you can't use the money for a lesser sacred purpose. So since the ola are considered a higher purpose, a more sacred purpose, therefore the money has to be put there in order to make sure that the money is not used for less than for a lesser sacred purpose than it was designated for. But now we have two problems. If let's say a person put money into that kinim chest, into the bird pair chest, because they have to bring one bird for an ola and one bird for a sin offering. Now that money, some of that money fell out, and we don't know where it goes. And we're saying, well, if it's halfway, if let's say it's whatever, whichever way we're determining, and we're saying, well, that money has to go into the gozla, let's go into the ola chest. But I had to bring a sin offering. I need that sin offering. If it's not offered, it's not going to help me. I have to have that sin offering to complete my process of purification. So how's that going to be covered? So the answer to that is that to take care of this possibility, I'm reading here from the bottom, that quoting from the Rav, from the Bartanura, citing the Bartanura, take care of this possibility, the temple treasury would give communal funds to Baichatas offerings for those whose money might have been lost. So if this is what happens, basically the Beis HaMikdash says, okay, we're going to use communal funds to buy a sin offering for that person. To make sure, meaning we're going to put that money into the chest to be able to cover or give money towards that in the chest towards that person for that person. All right, so that's one thing. All right, so my chatas offering will be covered because the Beis HaMikdash will take the responsibility to take communal funds to buy the sin offering for me in place of that money that lands up in the ola chest. But there's one more problem, and that is a sin offering. Every offering has an they throw blood onto the altar. That's part of the service, to throw blood onto the altar. The thing is let me read to you. By being stringent and assuming that the money fell from the ola's chest, we do not risk using chatas money for an ola, whose blood is sprinkled differently. Meaning, another problem is if I take this chatas money and I use it and I use that money to buy an ola, but this was chatas money. And the way the blood is sprinkled for a chatas is differently than the way the blood is sprinkled for an ola. Basically, there was this line on the altar. Some sacrifices, the blood was thrown below the line. For some, it was thrown above the line. And I believe the chatas was below the line and the ola was above the line. But one was, and that's significant because if you did one the other way, it would invalidate the sacrifice. So if I'm going to use this chatas money for an ola, and we use the sin offering money for an ola offering, for a completely burnt offering, the money was designated for a sin offering. It's got to, and its blood was sprinkled differently than the ola. So how can you just say, well, use it for an ola? I can't just use it for an ola. The blood is sprinkled differently. The answer is, for the court stipulates that any leftover chatas funds are to be used for ola offerings, and this includes our case as well. We learned previously that and actually we learned this, mentioned this a couple of times. Person designates money to buy a sin offering, right? And he has extra money. It's extra money. Where does it go? Remember, it goes to the communal Ola offerings. That was a stipulation that the sages made. That leftover chatas funds are used for the communal Ola offerings. Well, that same stipulation that dealt with the surplus chatas money includes this case as well of the chatas money that was found, and that has to go into the communal Ola offerings chest. So it's covered by the fact that we already know that the sages stipulated that that leftover chatas money can be used as a burnt offering, and this money is included in that also. So being used as a chatas, the chatas money used for an Ola offering won't be a problem, because in these circumstances, it was stipulated that those monies could be changed over for a burnt offering. Okay, next case. Now, these were all cases in the Beis Hamikdash. The next case, nothing to do with the Beis Hamikdash. You have one chest of money, that has chulin, non-sacred money. And then you have another chest of money that has Meiser Sheni money. Meiser Sheni, as we learned previously, is one of the second tithing that you have to take from your new grain in Israel. The second tithing, depending on which year it is of the Shemitah cycle, that money cannot be eaten outside of Yerushalayim. The fruits cannot be eaten outside of Yerushalayim. You got to take it to Yerushalayim to eat it there. If it's inconvenient to have to carry it to Yerushalayim, you can redeem it onto money and then take the money and eat it in Yerushalayim. So I have one bag of money of regular money and another bag of money of Meiser Sheni money, and I found money in between them. What do you do? And Meiser Sheni money, again, you can't. If it's Meiser Sheni money, you can't use it like regular money, right? So we say ben chulin leMeiser Sheni. Let's say you find a coin between a bag of chulin money, regular money, and Meiser Sheni money. Karev lachulin yiplu lachulin. If it's closer to the chulin money, it goes to the chulin. LeMeiser Sheni, if it's closer to the Meiser Sheni money, yiplu Meiser Sheni. It goes to the Meiser Sheni. Mechza lemechza, if it's in between halfway, yiplu Meiser Sheni. The money goes towards the Meiser Sheni. I got to use it for the more stricter purpose. Zaklal, this is the rule. I can go. I'm sorry. I can follow the closer. I can follow I can follow karev. I can follow the fact that it's closer to something lahakel to be lenient. Meaning, think about it. Let's just take this last case where the question was: is it chulin money? Is Meiser Sheni money? Now we said if it's closer to the chulin, it's chulin money. I mean, we have a doubt. We don't know, but the Torah tells us you can determine it with the fact that it's by its proximity. But at the end of the day, I'm using that determination of proximity to be lenient, because I'm saying I'll say that money is chulin money. I'm going to use it as chulin. I'm not going to use it like Meiser Sheni. So that's what the Mishnah means. I can follow the closer one to be lenient, even to be lenient. Mechza. But if it's halfway in between, I have no way of determining which one it's closer to. Lahachmer, they have to be stringent, because in all these cases, there's a Torah prohibition to use the monies. If the monies were to be used for a holier task, it's prohibited to use them for a lesser task, and therefore I'm left with the rule that I have a doubt regarding a Torah law what to do. And the rule is when I have a doubt about a Torah law what to do, I have to be more stringent. And therefore, in all these cases where the karev, the proximity, does not determine where it belongs, I have to put the money to more stricter use, because of the fact that savek daraisa l'chumra, when I have a doubt about a Torah law, I have to be stringent. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.